We've got a lot to cover today. And I want to start out, first of all, I want to start out by saying that I was raised in a middle-class home. And we are unburdened by what has been. By the way, do you know what it means to be unburdened by what has been? It's simply an obscure way of saying, kill the past, destroy the past. What has been is your past, it's history. Erase your history and move forward. It's the same tactics as we saw 3 or 4 years ago with knocking down all the statues and erasing history. That's just, I thought I'd throw that in. A little extra, no extra charge. But reflections on the election, it has been said by George Orwell, and if not George Orwell, we'll give him credit for it, that in a time of deceit, telling the truth is a revolutionary act. So let's start a revolution, shall we? I have a lot of truth to share with you. And for too long, our American pulpits have been cowed and silent into speaking into an area that affects every single one of us and every member of our family every single day of the year. By the way, if you haven't already voted, and I know that in Dallas, probably at least 50%, if not more, in this area, in the greater Dallas area, have already done early voting. If you have, God bless you. If you have not, and you're saving it for Election Day on Tuesday, I can recommend to you the iVoter Guide. That will help you. Just go iVoter Guide, put your address in, and it will spit out the picture of the candidates all the way down the ballot, and it has a little meter that tells you conservative, liberal, right to the left, etc. Shows you where they are on the meter. Very, very helpful. Again, all the way down the ballot, because you want to vote all the way down the ballot. The further down the ballot you go, the more impactful on your life will be your choices, right? The big guys, the Senate and the presidential, those are big, but really the ones that affect you are local judges and local state senators and representatives and school board. These are the ones that you really need to pay attention to. iVoterGuide.com, and that's not just Texas. That's all over the country for those of you who are watching at home, playing along at home. I want you to know that we haven't even had Election Day, and with early voting just now finishing here in Texas, but still going on in other parts of the country this weekend, our Attorney General has opened a criminal investigation into Dominion voting systems. And that is something that affects not only Texas, but it was instigated by Barry County and Sheriff in Barry County, Michigan. And so from the north to the south, these machines are proving problematic, and more so than the machines that should get our concerns alarmed. More so than the machines are, of course, people. People. How many states in the union are affected by potential or proven voter fraud already? You can see the numbers here. There's From zero, the colors of the map for each state go the spectrum. The darker, the more cases there are. In Texas, you can see that's dark. We have 111 cases already in Texas. North Carolina is problematic. Florida has been problematic. Illinois, and what a surprise, said no one anywhere. Minnesota, so many other states, Pennsylvania, et cetera, et cetera. So keep your eyes open and pay attention to what's going on. Buckle your seatbelts. We're in for a bumpy ride this Tuesday, and perhaps beyond, however long it takes for this issue of this particular election to be settled. We are living in a nation that really couldn't be more fractured. I said this 4 years ago, and our fractures are even fissures are even more are even deeper, more clearly problematic. We are a nation that is in desperate need of God's intervention. We're in desperate need of all patriots to stand up and be counted. It is not normal for a nation to be this divided. The population of our nation has not been this divided since the Civil War. And before that, the American Revolution itself. So we need God's help. In the United States, we have government by the people, for the people, and of the people. So in this representational government, this constitutional republic, it is our God-given responsibility, our sacred and holy duty to vote. So if you have not yet voted, this is the time. It is a God-given responsibility. It is a sacred, a holy duty to vote, and to vote intelligently, not just blindly. How is it, I wonder aloud, that 30 to 40 million Christians every election year have a pattern, a documented pattern of sitting out elections? What explains this? Is it indifference? Is politics too secular for these holy Christians? Is politics too dirty a business? Are they themselves too holy? Are these Christians, these brothers and sisters in the faith, are they somehow above exercising their sacred duty? I'm talking to you. You, no. If believers choose to sit out this election, they should not be surprised when non-Christians choose to engage, to advance their agendas. If you'll not stick up for your agenda, don't be surprised when non-believers choose to engage to advance their agendas. So I urge you, do not withhold your godly voices from the political process. If you withhold the godly voices from the political process, that will leave only the godless in charge. The moral high ground is not to be found staying at home on election day or election season. This is your opportunity to stand up for righteousness. Newsflash, Yeshua, Jesus, not going to be on the ballot. It's not too difficult, however, to determine even though Jesus is not on the ballot, we can still, having minds, educated minds, it's not too difficult to determine which candidate would most closely adhere to our biblical concerns and our Constitution. If your dainty conscience cannot stomach voting for a figure whom you find to be uncouth and or abrasive, well, then instead vote against the candidate of the party that demands unfettered access to terminating their offspring, the party that fecklessly wrings its hands over endless wars, the party that fails to react when its citizens are kidnapped by terrorists, the party that supports removing children from their homes in order to be mutilated, and this party has somehow misplaced their definition of womanhood. Vote against that party. Because the thing is, when you think about which of the imperfect people you're going to vote for and which of the imperfect parties you're going to select, and whether that be presidential, whether that be Senate, whether that be anywhere along the way, railroad commissioner, etc. I want you to think about this. No one likes everything about a potential spouse, and yet they still choose to get married. I, of course, should have put an asterisk there with rare exceptions. I don't like this about this candidate. I don't like the way they tweet, or I don't like the way they speak, or I don't like their tone. But no one likes everything about a potential. You still get married. No one likes every item on the menu of their favorite restaurant, even your favoriteest restaurant. There are some items you don't care for. And yet people still eat there. You choose to eat there. No one likes every aspect of their jobs. And yet they still choose to be employed there, to work. And no one likes everything about their church. I know. You don't have to pretend that you love everything there is about Beth Sar Shalom. There's no church that everybody feels that way about. I got everything. But yet you still choose to attend. And no one likes everything about particular candidates. And yet they still choose to vote. Have you ever in your history of voting liked every position of the candidate that you've chosen? Every position, attitude, interaction, and job that ever for the candidates you voted for? Of course not. 80% is actually pretty good. An 80% agreement is pretty fantastic. But we go to the scripture and we see that in Mark 12 and 17 and other places, Jesus said to them, "Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's." The question is, what belongs to Caesar? What belongs to God? What does belong to Caesar? What does belong to God? In our world, the question has become a bit muddied. Some may raise an eyebrow over the church becoming too political. No one in this room, of course. And surely none who have read the scripture concerning Moses. Was he too political? Or Elijah, too political? Or Isaiah, too political? or John the Baptist, too political, many, many others. Rather, we should be concerned over the state involving itself in matters of our religious faith, such as pushing abortion as a fundamental human right, redefining both marriage and the sexes, and using public education as indoctrination centers, churches, catechisms of this new faith. It's not that the church is getting too political. It's that politics are messing in areas of religion and our faith. And that should get our attention. Remember Romans 13:7, render to all, not just Jesus, but Paul spoke to this as well. Render to all what is due them, tax to whom tax is due, custom to whom custom, fear to whom fear, honor to whom honor. And Peter, as we covered last month, Peter jumps in as well. Chapter 2:13, submit yourself for the Lord's sake to every human institution, whether to the king as one in authority. It's just that in our nation, with a government of the people, by the people, for the people, we are the ones who are in authority, and we, on a regular basis, elect representatives to enact our will. I know you have opinions about how this nation, about how this state, about how this community should go. It is our God-given sacred right to exercise and share those opinions by choosing representatives to enact our will. Again, is there ever a candidate anywhere down the ballot, up the ballot, that is going to 100% represent you? No, not unless you yourself run for office. Then you'll have a candidate that will perfectly represent your opinions, will, and thoughts. Until that time, you choose the one who's the closest to you and vote against the one who is the farthest. So what sort of candidates should believers support? And far be it from me to tell you which candidate to vote for. I'm not in the business of telling people which candidate to vote for, but I sure am in the business of shining as much light on the candidates as possible, and then you can make your own decision. My decision is pretty obvious. However, I would never impose my will and say, you must do this. But I believe the educated voter is the best kind of voter. What kind of candidate should believers support? We begin by quoting Isaiah 5:20, woe to those who call good evil and evil good. Now think for a moment, just take a moment and see if you can apply that anywhere in government in the past 4 years. See if that applies in any way, shape, or form, if you've been paying attention. The thing is, our hope is in the gospel of Messiah. Our hope is not in the world's political parties or ideologies. Our hope is certainly not in a specific political party or candidate, no matter how popular or unpopular they may be. It's not where our hope is. Our hope is in Messiah. However, our God-given responsibility as American citizens is to diligently analyze and identify platforms and positions that best reflect biblical truth and to vote for those candidates who will best act to preserve the morality of our culture and protect our God-given liberties. So, yes, okay, but I am for a candidate and a party who is pro-information, not censorship. pro-information, not censorship. Romans 1:18, the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness. Suppressing the truth, that turns on the wrath of God. That releases the wrath of God. Mainstream, legacy, and social medias have a coordinated agenda. If you don't know this, wake up. Open your eyes. They have a coordinated agenda with the Democrat Party. And that agenda is designed purposely to manipulate participants. Each issue presented by the media is artfully framed to incite emotion. We hear it, we see it, and a hormonal rush is released that keeps us tuned in and logged on. Issues are purposefully misrepresented. Information is alternatively overemphasized or restricted or ignored entirely. When I say that mainstream legacy in social media, I'll tell you who I mean in one moment, but before I do, it's critical for believers to analyze the content we consume. Don't just consume it. Before you put something in your stomach, read the label. Find out what the sodium, how many carbohydrates, how many calories, what kind of chemicals are in this food. And before we put something in our minds, it's critical for believers to analyze the content we consume, to identify bias and slant, not only content that is being presented, but the content that is being obscured. You want the whole context. Here's a picture of me, right? And you see a hand raised. All you see presented is the hand raised. What is this person standing for? And then you see the rest of the picture, which is being obscured, and you get a full context. That's just a quick example. Talking about CNN, MSNBC, NBC, ABC, CBS, perhaps one of the most egregious. Washington Post, because you know what? Democracy dies in darkness. I think they should simply save a little bit of ink and simply say, Washington Post, democracy dies. And of course, the New York Times. Twitter, thank God, it's now X. Facebook, YouTube, Google. Of course, Google is the greatest. I don't think it's arguable. It's the greatest search engine, most powerful search engine, but yet they are also the most involved in censorship. Their slogan used to be, don't be evil. Now, again, saving ink, it's just be evil. I said it. Conservative news website search results are regularly clustered at the bottom, way, way down at the bottom of a search. You get 10 items per search. You're looking for the like, for example, an interview, a 3-hour interview that former president recently did this week with the greatest and most popular podcaster in the nation. You can't find it on YouTube. You can't find it in Google. It is being suppressed, clustered near the bottom. We are surrounded by fake news, and we yawn. Yeah, whatever, they're all phony. Who knows what to believe? I'll simply hide my head in the sand and pretend that it's 1955 again, and media is all trustworthy, and everything is not only honky-dory, but howdy-doody. It's not like it was 50 years ago. Oh, Uncle Walter Cronkite, he's not coming back. But if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there, or Google is suppressing, or YouTube is suppressing the tree falling in the forest, not only can you not hear it, but you can't see it, and you don't know that a tree has fallen. You have to pay attention to your sources of information. How about our current president? The picture of competence. He's moved from eating ice cream to eating the feet of babies. There's a great video where they put the Jaws music as he approaches the foot of this baby. And look at that bite. It's extraordinary. He opens wide. Biting Biden. He's gotten stronger in his call. We're no longer looking to condemn Aunt Hillary for disparaging the deplorables. Now we've gone from half the conservatives being deplorables a mere 7 years ago. Now half of America is labeled by the leader of our nation as garbage. But that's okay to be garbage if you've got someone to take out the trash. So if you hate censorship, the Democrat Party isn't for you. Pro-information. Pro-free speech. I want a candidate that's pro-free speech because Genesis tells us in chapter 1 that God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. God gave all of us freedom. Freedom of thought, freedom of speech. We must not be woke. We must wake up. If you believe in the First Amendment, the Democrat Party isn't for you. Pro-Israel. I want a candidate in the party that's pro-Israel. Genesis 12, Abrahamic covenant, verse 3. I will bless those who bless you. The one who curses you, I will curse it in you. All the families of the earth will be blessed. Psalm 122 tells us to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. May they prosper who love you. May peace be within your walls, prosperity within your palaces. For the sake of my brothers and my friends, I will now say, my peace be within you. For the sake of the house of the Lord, our God, I will seek your good. When Donald Trump was our president, he moved the American embassy to Jerusalem. Yes, indeed. I was there. In fact, many of you were there. We took our tour in 2018. Yeah, it was 2018, yes. When he moved the embassy to Jerusalem. It was an extraordinary day. Congress had ruled that this was to happen back in the 90s. And no president had the guts, the chutzpah, to do so except Donald J. Trump. Donald J. Trump is the first president to recognize Jerusalem as Israel's capital. That's why he moved the embassy to Jerusalem. Donald J. Trump was the first president to pray at the Western Wall. Can you imagine that? Wow, Jimmy Carter, he was an evangelical Christian. Why didn't he go? George W. Bush, Barack Hussein Obama. Why is Donald J. Trump the first president to pray at the Western Wall? Just is. Gets my attention. Trump created the Abraham Accords, 4 Nobel nominations. He brokered peace and normalization between Israel and the UAE, Bahrain, Sudan, and they reversed 1967's 3 no's from the Arab world: no peace, no recognition, and no negotiation. Donald J. Trump, pro-Israel, did that. Nobody's going to take that away. When Donald J. Trump was president, the Ayatollah was sitting, dreaming, saying, I wish Obama were back in office. I miss Obama's pallets of cash. If only he had known, wait 4 years, and Biden will give you just as much, if not more, cash. Cash that can be used by the Ayatollah in Iran for terrorism against Israel, for arming Hamas, for our current president's administration to withhold weapons transfers from America to Israel in the midst of an existential war fought on 7 fronts. I want a president who, if our American citizens are kidnapped by terrorists, will move heaven and earth to get the release of American citizens from being held hostage by terrorists, not to risk and to lose American lives like Hirsch Goldberg Poland, who lost his life. I want a president, I want an administration that will not kowtow to college thugs crying out for the destruction of Israel and the propagation of a terrorist group, a worldwide terrorist group, Hamas. I want a group that's not going to be marching and crying out shrilly from the river to the sea. In other words, all the territory that is Israel, and saying Palestine will be free. I want a president who'll stand up against it. I want a president who will not boycott when the Prime Minister of Israel comes to address Congress, who will not boycott as Kamala did when Netanyahu came to speak. Look at who's back there. Who's that, Leahy? Back there where Kamala should be as vice president. She's not there. She boycotted the Prime Minister of Israel. I'm looking for someone who will support and stand for Israel. If you love Israel, the Democrat Party isn't for you. I want a president, I want a party that is pro-life. Isaiah 44, thus says the Lord your Redeemer, the one who formed you from the womb. Psalm 22, upon you I was cast from birth. You have been my God from my mother's womb. Jeremiah 1, now the word of the Lord came to me saying, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I consecrated you. Psalm 139, you have formed my inward parts. You wove me in my mother's womb. I will give thanks. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. The Bible is pro-life. Deuteronomy 30, the words of Moses. I call heaven and earth, top to bottom, to witness against you today. I have set before you life and death and blessing and curse. So choose life in order that you may live, not just you. You and your descendants, your progeny, your offspring. Do not kill your progeny. Do not kill your offspring. These are clumps of cells, of course, and the many stages of clumped cells. According to the pro-life movement, we see how from conception all the way through, in an unbroken line, humanity progresses. The single life progresses from the moment of conception. As Dr. Micheline Matthews Ross, professor of medicine at Harvard Medical School, says, it's scientifically correct to say an individual life begins at conception. The science is settled, in other words, is what she's saying. I want to break this down for you. I've got the receipts, but we don't have time for the receipts. I want to just simply say that Trump was the most pro-life president ever. Forget the fact that now it's in the States and that's where he wants it to stay. The whole point of bringing down Roe v. Wade was to return this to the States. It should not surprise any of us in the pro-life movement that Donald J. Trump does not want a national ban on abortion. It's not a national issue. We have a constitution. It's a state issue. And he remains the most pro-life president we have ever had. Yeah, more than George W., more than Ronald Reagan, more than anyone. It is indisputable that Biden is the most pro-abortion president ever. And the Democrat Party, as we know it today, is the most pro-abortion it has ever been. Almost a pro-abortion party we've ever seen. And Vice President Harris would be even worse than her boss. Now, I have a list of stuff. I don't want to read all this stuff about what Trump did defending Planned Parenthood, the first president to personally speak at March for Life, signed an executive order protecting babies born alive, on and on and on. If you want to read this when you're watching at home, by all means, there's 7 points just on this slide. I've got another 14 right here. Of course, Donald Trump clarifying that abortion not a civil right, certainly not a constitutional right, ended taxpayer-funded research using aborted babies. It led a 32 nations signing ceremony of a declaration that affirms there's no international right to abortion. And of course, most important one, 16, he nominated the 3 Supreme Court judges who ruled against Roe and returned the issue to each state. So, 16 points here. Again, this is not a message on pro-life. I've got 16 points of why he was the most pro-life president ever. No reason to doubt that he will continue his run. But today, in the Democrat Party, it's not a debate, they say. Shout your abortion, they shrilly cry. Everyone knows I had an abortion. We're a long way from the Democrat Party of 30 years ago. Let's make abortion safe, rare, and legal. That's not today's party. This is all about abortion. In fact, if you had to name one thing that we know that Kamala Harris is in favor and stands for, it is for destroying the filibuster in order to push through a national constitutional, quote unquote, right to abortion. For goodness sake, at the Democrat convention, they had a truck. I love going places and seeing trucks because usually it's a food truck. And they say, what kind of food do they have at these? What they have at this truck? Free abortions. Right there. So in case you get a little too enthusiastic at the Democrat convention, you can go the next day and say, I'll take an abortion. To go, please. free of charge. I love someone who had a... And that was not to say that we don't love people. It's statistically likely that right now people who are watching this, or maybe even people in this room, have had an abortion. Just because we stand against it doesn't mean that we don't love we all do things. We all have pasts, right? I stand against profanity. It doesn't mean that I've never been profane, right? I don't support profanity, but yet I myself, perhaps the chief of sinners, right? And so this picture tells the whole thing. What does the Democrat Party stand for? They didn't have free food. They didn't have a truck for free clothes. They didn't have a truck for free immigration registration. They had a truck for free abortions. This is the defining issue for the Democrat Party. As Proverbs 8:36 says, all those who hate me, God speaking, love death. And yes, I will say it, I'll go on record. The Democrat Party loves death, the death of our future offspring. I said it. I can't take it back, and I won't. Very clearly, Harris would be the most pro-abortion president ever. Push for legislation making Roe into law. Committed to a constitutional right to abortion. That was the whole issue. It's not in the Constitution. When she was a senator, she was the most pro-abortion senator. She voted against the Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act and the Pain Capable Unborn Child Act. It's barbarism. At 20 weeks, babies in the womb are capable of feeling pain. There are babies who are born through botched abortion. The abortion doesn't work, and they're born alive. She voted against giving life-saving care. Once a baby's born, it's born, right? But clearly, she seems to be in favor, and the Democrat Party seems to be in favor of infanticide. Well, let's see. Because you know what? She believes that abortion is health care and essential to women's equality. So many things she did. Again, 8 issues that she did. If you value the unborn, the Democrat Party is not for you. By the way, the women are marching again in Washington this weekend. You remember 4 years ago, they had their march in their spunky little hats, pink hats. Ha ha, we're all in on the joke, right? Let's all cheer for Madonna saying that she's thought often about blowing up the White House. Yeah, let's cheer that. The article in the Washington Post today tells us that they support issues including the restoration of the right to choose an abortion. We feel like we need to keep the energy up. Let's see, okay. Among those planning to rally in Washington is such and such. She's 77 years old. Our wisest generation. She began protesting for women's rights in 1980. She took her two daughters, and she believes, now she's a grandmother of 5, she'll be marching in support of reproductive rights. It's terrifying to me, she said. I want them to have the same rights than their grandmother. Another mother of 3, she's marching to build a better future for her children, for reproductive rights, and for women to be seen as equals. What decade are you living in marching for women to be seen as equals? Equals to what? Equal to transgenders who get involved in women's sports? What are you marching for? I'm a teacher of history, she says. It's worrisome to see the direction we're in. We're more determined than ever to protect our families and our communities and our rights from those who loudly and proudly seek to destroy our democracy. We don't have a democracy, you ignoramus. We have a republic. The moment that somebody tells you that they're fighting to defend democracy, you know that they don't know what they're talking about, first of all, and they certainly have no right to hold office. But if you value the unborn, the Democrat Party isn't for you. I'm for pro-Constitution. We, the people of the United States, right? We have a Bill of Rights, including freedom of speech, press, assembly, petition, and of course, religion. John Adams said our Constitution was made only for a moral and a religious people. It's wholly inadequate to the government of any other. I'm looking at you, Kamala. If you believe in the Constitution, the Democrat Party is not for you. I got to start moving because we're out of time, running out of time. I'm going to take as much time as I need, so buckle your seatbelts. We're not going anywhere. I'm for a candidate in a party that's pro-freedom of religion, right? Pro-freedom of religion, such as not our present party and our present president and vice president who declared Easter Sunday as Transgender Day of Visibility. It's what we call in Yiddish a shanda. It's a shame. We should have ashes on our head and sackcloth as our clothes to have this kind of leadership. Our nation should be praying in repentance for the ones we have chosen to lead us, and that we never make this kind of mistake again.
Oh, you guys are at the wrong rally. No, I think you meant to go to the smaller one down the street.
Look at those behind, all women, all young, all abortion fanatics. 2 teenagers, 2 young people cried out, Jesus is Lord, to just proclaim, stand for truth, speaking truth to power. He said, you're at the wrong rally. Next week, somebody did that with J.D. Vance, and he said, yeah, you're right, Jesus is Lord. Let me get back to my point. I want a candidate, I want a party who's pro-religious freedom. So if you value freedom of religion, your constitutional rights, the Democrat Party, not for you. I want a candidate who's pro-republic.
Hi, I'm Fox San Antonio's Jessica Headley.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our Treasure Valley communities,
the El Paso, Las Cruces communities,
Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But we are concerned about trouble and trending irresponsible, one-sided news stories
plaguing our country.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
the sharing of biased and
False news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these same stories without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 I present to you the propaganda arm of the Democrat Party. They're singing from the same hymnal, taking and obeying the same marching orders, repeating the same lies over and over and over again until you become inured to it. It becomes just natural for you to hear democracy. You know what democracy is, according to Benjamin Franklin? 2 wolves and a sheep deciding what to have for lunch. Democracy is mob rule. It's exactly the kind of government we do not have. Seems to be one party simply chooses to ignore that. Like the Borg. They sound like the Borg. The resistance is futile. No, it's not. The church can rise up and be truly the resistance. Not resistance for the sake of resistance, but to restore. We can be the restorationists of the Constitution. In fact, I think restorationist is a far better term than conservative, right? I've been a conservative for decades, and I can tell you this, that as long as I've paid attention to the Conservative Party, I can't think of one thing that the Conservative Party has actually conserved. We just try to slow things down in this inexorable march toward moving forward, progress, ever forward toward Marxism. So I'd like to be a restorationist. Restore the Constitution.
Many, with no exceptions for rape or incest. You know what? Let me say something about this. We're here because we're fighting for a democracy.
Are you? But that's what you're fighting for.
A democracy. And understand the difference here. Understand the difference here. Moving forward. Moving forward. Understand the difference here.
Moving forward, understand the difference here. We are fighting for democracy. This is the Senate. This is the democracy that this candidate is fighting for, to destroy the filibuster so that she can push her agenda forward. If that happens, there is no protection for minority opinions. It means 51 can bully their way. 51 can bully their way to packing the court. I like the looks of the numbers here, the people on the court. Looks like a nice number. You can fit everybody in a picture. You start adding judges to it, as the Democrats want to do, as they threaten to do, as they promise to do. You're going to have to get a wider lens. I don't stand for that. They want to undo the Electoral College. They don't like the Electoral College. They don't like the Electoral College. They think that it's anti-democracy, because it is. How many elections occur in this nation on election day? 51. Each state and the District of Columbia have their own election. There's no national election. We have a national election day, but every state has their own election. That's the Electoral College. That's what our founders put in place, and it's genius. If you believe in the Republic, the Democrat Party, clearly not for you. I want a candidate who's pro-choice. Pro-choice regarding my body, my choice. Do you know how many letters I wrote interceding for people whose jobs were demanding that they get vaccinated with this phony baloney? Not vaccine. There was nobody on the left saying my body, my choice when everybody was trying to do the vaccine mandate and you lost your jobs. Many, many good people lost their jobs, and I'm privileged to have written religious exemption letters for many people. I'm proud of it. But I'm for pro-education choice. Pro-education choice. Because Proverbs says, train up a child in the way he will go. And when he's old, he will not depart from it. I don't want the education camps in our public schools to indoctrinate our children. Because the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, and fools despise wisdom and instruction. So if you don't want our children to become indoctrinated leftists, Democrat Party, not for you. I'm for a candidate who's pro-immigration, pro-legal immigration. God is too. He made from one man every nation of mankind, appointed times and the boundaries of their habitation, Acts 17. I will fix your boundaries, Exodus 23. Between you and us is a great chasm fixed. None may cross. It's a border, Luke 16, even in the eternal condition. Deuteronomy 19, don't move your neighbor's boundary mark. In other words, don't ignore borders that are in place. And the same law, Exodus 12, shall apply to the native as to the stranger who sojourns among you. So the same legal code, including how to get into the country, applies to the citizens and to the strangers who live among you. No exemptions. And yet, the cry in the Democrat Party is for citizenship. Now, this is 11 million. That was 4 years ago. We know that another 20 million have come in. 30 million people, almost 10% of our population in America, are illegal immigrants. Opening wide the borders of our nation. It's not compassionate. It's not loving to open the borders of our nation. There's nothing compassionate about the sex trafficking of hundreds of thousands of women and children. Nothing compassionate about the wholesale importation of poisonous drugs. Nothing compassionate about importing violent and ruthless cartel thugs. Nor is there anything loving about allowing hordes of the unknown and unvetted to crowd out those who are waiting in line to immigrate here legally. To overload our nation's capacity to assimilate newcomers is not only cultural suicide, it's a selfish, cruel deprivation for our existing citizens. It deprives us of finances. It deprives us of resources. It deprives us of homes. It deprives us of employment. It deprives us of safety. It deprives us of health. TB is on the rise again. Oh boy. And all too often, it deprives us of life itself. These are just two. You know Jocelyn and Lakin. These are the ones that were on the news that we know. But there's so many in just the past 4 years who have lost their lives needlessly. Look at those young. There's nothing compassionate about opening those borders. It's not loving to Jocelyn and her family. It's not loving. It's not compassionate to Lakin. It's cruel. It's heartless. So the Democrat Party, yes, is the heartless, uncaring party. If you value secure borders and the rule of law, the Democrat Party is not for you. Opening up your borders, now that I'm on it, oh boy, opening up your borders to an unlimited number of people, many of whom you don't even know who they are. It's like opening up your yap and saying, all you can eat buffet. I'm going to eat, and I'm going to eat, and I'm going to keep on eating. Eventually, the system, thinking back to a Monty Python sketch, where the guy just keeps eating and eating. Eventually, he explodes. But really, in reality, what happens is that the system either shuts down, or you have a terrible stomachache, or frankly, you can't assimilate all that food at once. and you're constipated. Yeah, I said that from the pulpit. We all understand the concept. Our nation is constipated with newcomers who will simply not only can't assimilate, they don't want to assimilate. They want to bring that which they left and bring it here. I say no. I'm for a party and for a candidate that's pro-objective truth, a political party, a political ideology that insists on others' acceptance of personal subjective feelings through legal coercion or force, simply unreasonable and incongruent with the Word of God. Objective truth, baby. Objective truth. I'm for a party that stands for truth because our faith is built on objective truth. The Bible records narrative history. The Bible makes objective truth claims through a series of propositions starting with in the beginning. God created, start continuing to I am the way, the truth, and the life, resting on Yeshua's resurrection. There is objective truth. We live in the real world, not the fantasy world of the left, of the Marxists. Continually erase and define language and concepts to undermine objective truth. There's only one party doing that. So that what was only common and acceptable only a few years ago can today get someone's voice canceled. We all know examples. So if you believe in objective truth, Democrat Party is not for you. I'm going to start to move now. Got to move. Pro-science? Yeah, right? Science predicated on skepticism. Don't need to read this. Let's move on, right? There was a lot of science, right? Science is settled regarding math. How stupid. Stupid, right? How many people still walking along the sidewalk, the beach, by themselves, wearing a mask? Maybe not in Texas. And of course, this little troll, Greta Thunberg, how dare you, right? We stole your childhood. I think somebody stole your brain, honey, because climate change, all that stuff that you wanted, you don't know what you're talking about. Science is not settled. Science doesn't work that way. So if you believe in science laced more with skepticism than ideology, Democrat Party, it is not for you. I'm for a candidate that's pro-sex, not gender. But of course, Judges tells us nothing new. In those days, there was no king in Israel. Everyone did what was right in his own eyes. And we have the spectacle of gender-neutral restrooms today. I like the one in the middle, right? But the half a skirt, that's going to be a little drafty, I think. But nonetheless, gender is foolish. If you believe that nouns have gender and people have sex, Democrat Party, not for you. I want you to remember that nobody used gender as a synonym for sex until feminist ideology, radical feminist ideology in the 70s began to push this in the university. Anyone who's learned languages understands nouns have gender. Throughout the entire history of mankind, people have sex. Okay, bottom line. If you don't believe that, okay, maybe the Democrat Party is for you. If you believe a child is incapable of informed consent regarding chemical, surgical, irreversible bodily mutilation, Democrat Party, not for you. If you believe that biological males have no business competing in women's sports, Democrat Party, not for you. I'm for a candidate that's pro-America because God makes the nations great. He destroys them. He enlarges the nations. He leads them away, Job says. And 1 Timothy, I urge entreaties and prayers, petitions and thanksgiving be made on behalf of all men for kings and all who are in authority. So if you treasure and have a deep and abiding love for our nation, Democrat Party, not for you. At one time it was. That's why we see so many luminaries from that party now leaving. I'm for a candidate in a party that's pro-law enforcement. Well, you understand, we all remember what democracy looks like. This is what democracy. Mob rule, yes, this is what democracy looks like. We remember it. I expect on November 6th or whatever date we learn, we're going to see more of that. If you value law and order, Democratic Party is not for you. I'm for a pro-justice party. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere, said Martin Luther King. Right? As the scripture said, let justice roll down like waters, righteousness as an ever-rolling stream. Scripture has a lot to say about justice. And of course, the mob cries and says, no justice, no peace. But they're talking about social justice, which is state redistribution of advantages and resources from one group to another. Note the emphasis on imposition of equality of outcome. On imposition of equality of outcome and result toward groups and the indifference to equality of opportunity for the individual, which is what America stands for, equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome. That's Marxism. But what can we expect when the candidate of the Democrat Party is the child of two Marxist professors? Because equity necessitates the identification of group victims and group oppressors, which is why our nation is fractured and why we're all at each other's throats. Justice is blind. She's good looking, but she's blind, carrying the scales. Biblical justice is the distribution of righteousness through upholding and application of the law with impartiality, with fairness, without regard to social or economic status. That's what the Bible talks about when we see justice. Social justice is different. The Supreme Court oath of office is very explicit to that extent. So if you believe in the administration of justice, the Democrat Party, it's not for you. If one candidate prevails, we not only get that candidate, we get an entire team of X-Men. I'm pro-justice, pro-justice league. X-Men. Look who you get. You not only get Donald J. Trump, you get Jordan, you get Bobby, you get Elon, you get Tulsi, Vivek, JD. What a team. I'm pro-liberty. I want a candidate that's pro-liberty. And if you love freedom, I got to tell you, the Democrat Party, it is not for you. I'm pro-character. Nobody can say that Donald J. Trump is not a character. But if you were to take the character of one against the other, and that's the major objection of so many Christians, why they want to stay home. Because they don't like the character of either of these candidates. They believe that in a battle for the soul of a nation, that both candidates are found wanting. Is Trump a narcissist? Who's run for president who's not a narcissist? It's required. Narcissist, every presidential candidate ever. Period. Someone's got an abrasive tone versus a polished tone. Who's a peacemaker? Who's an adulterer? We're concerned about Donald J. Trump and his history. We should be concerned about Kamala as well, who climbed her way up, one relationship at a time. Willie Brown, on and on, as through avarice and ambition, she used her position to climb along the political rungs and the political ladder Donald J. Trump, adulterer, yeah, but not for the purpose of vain, naked ambition or avarice. So both are adulterers. Ambitious opportunist, Trump ambitious for wealth and expanding his position. But an opportunist, no, he didn't need to run for any office whatsoever. But on the other side of the aisle, ambitious opportunist, oh yes, oh yes. Name caller, Trump, he's so mean. He calls the other candidates Hitler and Stalin and Mussolini and fascist. Oh, sorry, I got confused for a second. That's the Democrat candidate calling the Republican candidate, right? So they're both name callers, okay? Plagiarist. That's one that I can't say both are. Just like our current president is a plagiarist, bold-faced plagiarist, so too, very clearly, our Democrat Party candidate, our current vice president, is a demonstrated plagiarist, just like her boss. Donald Trump, you can say a lot about him, but nobody's not going to say he didn't write the art of the deal. Nobody's going to say his accomplishments are not his accomplishments. They belong to somebody else. Is Donald J. Trump a leftist? No. But I know someone who is.
Past.
Let's get beyond that. We speak to the resistance. I love this picture of Donald J. Trump with a Hitler mustache. Oh, that really hurts me. I'm sure it really hurts Donald J. Trump as well, right? Someone has to drain the swamp. Which candidate is most likely to be effective in draining the swamp and restoring the Constitution? So, pro-character in conclusion. If you value promise-keeping over political mendacity, the Democrat Party is not for you. Brothers and sisters, this is our hour. America desperately needs every one of our voices. I'm talking to those in the room and I'm talking to those at home. America desperately needs every one of our voices to be heard. At the polls, we have been called for such a time as this. A time such as this, while we still have our sacred liberty to exercise.